How to lose all your jobs in one simple step, messing with me. So the start of this revenge happened over a year ago, just found out about the results last week. I, 24, used to work at a non-profit as a warehouse associate for their food distribution program. It was a good job for where I was at and where I was in life, easy work, easy hours, good pay. At the time I had made friends with my fiance's friends, let's call them Jim, 25 meters, and Bailey, 25 NB. We played D&D, hung out most weekends, etc. Jim was frankly, a really bad employee. When we met he had gone through multiple jobs in a span of a few months, all of them quitting because of various reasons, bad workplace, toxic coworkers, anxiety issues, etc. I felt for him and stuck my neck out to get a job at the warehouse and he got it. On top of that he got kicked out of his dad's place and had to move in with Bailey and their mom because he refused to do any of the chores his dad asked him to do. All was going well for a while, he was only working part-time but he seemed to enjoy the new job, got along with everyone and we had a good time working together, even though I'm a few years younger than him. I have a lot more work experience than he does, so I was even able to mentor him in good work ethic, how to run forklift/warehouse equipment, and how to get his job done better and more efficiently. Because of me, him and I were the only competent employees in that warehouse for a few months as we had two other associates that were constantly showing up late, leaving early, on their phones more than working, etc. We will call then Mary, 29F, and Zeke, 20M. Relevant later in the story. Now my immediate boss wasn't an issue, we got along fine, but the program director Bethany, late 40s F, was a real gatekeep, gaslight, girl boss. Plus, she wasn't great at her job. Granted she could write grants really well and get the money we needed, but she spent it on the absolute dumbest shit. $30K plus for a cargo box cooler for outside that wasn't meant to be ran 24/7, blew up after a year and a half, tiny electric forklifts that could barely lift 300 pounds, a $80,000 gas engine Ford F-250 with a lift and bull bars to pull a trailer that barely weighed a ton, a 30-foot mobile pantry tiny house, and solar panels for it that never got installed, and two single-axle box trucks that weren't anywhere near rated to haul what we were loading them with. When I voiced opinion or complaints about our equipment or the work ethic of my coworkers I was either blatantly ignored or told I need to learn to work with people with different work ethics than myself. So at a point I just stopped saying anything, let her dig her own grave so to speak. Now back to Jim and Bailey. As we got closer as friends so began talks of finding a place we could all move in together. Never made any agreement, never shook hands or confirmed anything. Just talked about it. Then out of nowhere my older sister brought up moving in with her 3 hours away to her town where my fiancé and I could finally get out of our hometown and make better money. She even agreed to pay majority rent, first last, and any fees till we got on our feet. So of course we agreed and started job searching. I decided to let Jim know while we were at work about what was going on, and let him know if they wanted, him and Bailey could take over the lease for our current place. Nothing fancy, a studio basically but a house on a quarter acre 5 minutes from the warehouse, and the rent was about 40% lower than anywhere else in town for the same amount of space. Jim seemed to take it fine, said he would let Bailey know and that was that. Next thing I know my fiancée is getting her phone blown up with calls and texts saying we were fucking them over, and I was a misogynistic asshole for talking to Jim at work instead of talking to both of them at the same time. Also decided to tell my fiancée I was manipulating her into ruining their friendship and moving away. At that point I decided to end the friendship between myself and them but told my fiancée she was her own person and could make her own decisions on the matter. She after a few days of thought and more angry texts now attacking me and my fiancée decided to do the same. I tried to talk to Jim. I sat there in shock as what they said sank in. They were weaseling out of paying any bonus or incentive for the deal. Even though there was clear paper trail and evidence that I was the one who landed the client and got them the deal, they were shafting me out of paying the bonus. The boss looked on without saying anything. He seemed a little ashamed but ended up siding with his kids as he said it doesn't matter who got the deal. The main thing is, you are the one who will work on the project to make sure it is delivered. By this point, I had been working for over 9 years with these people. I had mediocre pay and no prospect of career growth. I knew I was not going to get another job in the industry I love in the country I lived in. I stood up and looked the boss straight in the eye and said, I am done. I cannot work with your kids or SM anymore. I left the room without a backwards glance. Turns out, SM had hoped I would do this and jumped at the opportunity to badmouth me to the boss. The kids piled on and the boss gave me the notice to leave immediately rather than serve the 3 months of notice period. Apparently SM had advised the boss that I might sabotage the business if I stayed on and that his kids and him could handle any work that I was handling. So after 9 years of pouring my life and soul into this business, I left with only a week, thanks from the boss and a smirk on the faces of the kids. My wife was supportive and she luckily had an opportunity in another country. We relocated within 2 months and here I am now. It has been almost a year and I remain unemployed as I had no market exposure in the new country. But I am taking this time to be a stay-at-home dad and enjoy every minute of it with my son. I have never been so relaxed and happy. Almost every employee in the company is in good terms with me and they have been updating me on everything. Turns out, the boss assigned his eldest daughter and son to finalize the deal with the client. They set up a meeting to let him know they will be the ones to handle his project. When he asked them specific details on the customization, they couldn't get their facts straight. The client ended up canceling the deal. SM tried to scramble and arrange another meeting with the client. Even then they didn't have anyone who was able to answer all the queries the client had. Apparently the client got annoyed and asked about me. When he learned that I was no longer working, he told them that he is not going to take any more meetings with them. They lost a project that would have given them $1 million in pure profit. They soon lost a few more existing tender bids for not being able to provide adequate technical details. One day I get a call from SM. He was all cheerful asking how I'm enjoying my break and if I'm ready to get back to work, as if nothing had happened. I asked him what he meant. He said I can take you on as a consultant. You work from that country and provide remote support and I will pay you directly. I asked him if the boss was aware of this deal. He didn't answer me and ended the call asking me to think about it. A few weeks later the boss calls me and asks me to join back immediately. He said we will give you a 10% raise. Just join within the month. I refused and he blew his temper. He accused me of being petty and that I should take this opportunity to get back to work. He threatened me further, stating he had already spoken to all the local competitors with whom he has a backroom agreement not to hire me at any cost. I still refused and said I have never had a more satisfying responsibility than the one I have right now. I will never go back to your firm and best of luck running it with your kids and SM. I still don't have a job and I am not keen on jumping into the next opportunity unless it offers me a balanced work life. The boss and his kids continue to lose clients and the business has started shrinking now. They still continue to badmouth me to the local industry experts for being so petty, but I have learnt to enjoy the Pyrrhic victory. There was a party the boys asked to go to that I specifically said no to and instructed my wife to not let them go either. The boys tried to go when my wife reminded them of what I said, and they told her she wasn't their mother and to stop acting like it. I repeated that it was order and she couldn't let them go. The boys blamed her for their bio mom not being able to go to the trip, and long story short, one of my boys slapped her. I came home Saturday morning as I always do because everyone is home and they all wake up early to come greet me, and my wife would usually be making something delicious with loud music playing and my boys would be arguing over something and they would always run to hug me. This time I came, the house was quiet, no one was downstairs. I went to check on the boys and they were in a bad mood, and I went to find my wife and she was in bed just laying there. I later found out what happened and scolded the boys and canceled the trip. They begged and pleaded with me and apologized to my wife. She said there was no need to cancel the trip since I spent so much money on it. So I suggested she goes with B and the boys. She pointed out some safety concerns since we don't really know B as well and she's not exactly strong, so she forced me to go. While on the trip I called her a lot, but she preferred to text. A week later we got back and noticed the plants were dry, even though my wife prides herself in her garden. The inside looked exactly as it was when we left. I checked our house alarm system and noticed the door hadn't been opened since it closed when we left. I found my wife laying in her sewing room with all of my alcohols, even though she had never drank any before, and I also noticed all of the clothes she made for the trip had been cut apart. She continued not to speak or move for the next 2 days, so I had to bathe her, but she wouldn't take any food. After some time she started to eat and hold me back when I would hug her, and we finally talked. I apologized for everything that has happened and she accepted my apology and forgave the boys. I noticed the 2 days that followed that she didn't really speak to the boys like she used to. She hasn't hugged them, kissed them, or made any cute comments about how much she loved them. A Friday also passed and she usually does game nights, but she hasn't. I confronted her and she told me she wasn't their mother, and her job was to make sure they were taken care of and she wasn't hurting them in any way. It has been like that since. The house is quiet, our relationship is back to normal and she's affectionate towards me and everything, but she's not like that with the kids. A backstory about my wife: she has always wanted kids. She wanted only 2 kids to be specific because she didn't want to drive a minivan. Before we got married we talked about the kids and she told me she didn't want any since she now has 2, which are boys. I asked twice after that because I make enough and we have a 6-bedroom house, so it wouldn't be a problem. But she gave me the same answer, telling she already has 2 kids. Today she told me wanted a baby. I feel if I do agree she will completely let go of the kids we have now. How should I go about this? Has anyone else who's remarried had an issue with their kids not getting along with new partner? Context: I'm Pan, and I don't make that a secret. For almost the entire time we lived together I had a dumb joke painting of a TikTok quote I made hanging in the living room. One day I noticed it was suddenly sitting on my desk when I got home from work. Whatever, maybe the command strip wore out, so I hung it back in its place. The next day I got home and lo and behold, the painting is back on my desk. I walked out to the living room to find him and our new neighbors, drinking and engaging in unsavory conversation. I asked him, "What's up with the painting?" Instead, or my brother answering, I heard from one of the girls something along the lines of, "Some people don't want to have that gay shit shoved in their face." Immediately I asked her to leave, because I won't go back in the closet, not for anyone. She refused, so I got a little mad, might have called her bitch. If I didn't, I should have. After the 3rd time asking her to leave, my brother started claiming that he just doesn't like the painting. That he's never had a problem with for a year and a half. Things rapidly escalated. Without getting into much detail so I don't bum people out before the good part of the story, he assaulted me. By the end of the next hour, I had a broken nose, and 2 massive breaks in my eye socket. He got a small bruise on the back of the head from a flimsy curtain rod I attempted to defend myself with. The cops were called, of course, and somehow, despite the obvious physical indicators of who's the bad guy, I was the one who ended up in jail that night because I used a weapon, the flimsy curtain rod. My mom picked me up in the morning and took some of my things and my dog from the apartment. I've been living with her since. Okay, here comes the part about the revenge. I was using my mom's phone for something about a week later, and saw a text from my brother about his plans to throw a party in his apartment for his birthday. I was enraged. How dare he act like he didn't just lose the one person who stuck by him despite his aberrant actions for years. So I devised a simple, but effective plan. I called up his ex, who was still living in the same city, and asked her to swing by the apartment complex to see if he was doing what I suspected, serving alcohol to minors. Remember that 2 of the neighbors were under 21. She was more than happy to oblige after his abuse, manipulation, and rape. The night came and we kept in contact, and she confirmed that a fuck ton of people were there, including the 2 underage girls. So we enacted phase 2, She called the police. I had to mostly stay out of it due to the protection order the city put against me while my case was being settled. Normally I detest calling the police on a party, but god damn it I was angry, still am. By the end of the night, he was facing charges for serving, I think, 5 underage people, he was facing a fine he couldn't afford to pay, and eviction due to the multiple incidents involving police. Sorry for the long story, but maybe you found some enjoyment. Personally I don't think I went far enough. I'm still no contact with my brother, and am still battling PTSD from the night. Hopefully this act of catharsis helps me heal some more.